Greetings, Wayward Souls, it's the Game Pack Preacher, and y'all, I love Rareware games. I love them a lot, actually. One could say I'm a Rareware fanboy, so today I want to go over some of my favorite titles from their library. However, all that glitters is not gold, so to keep it even, I'm also gonna go over some of their games I don't like, balancing all things and all that. We're keeping it simple and sweet this time, but we got some ground rules to cover first. I'll be doing 5 games for both the best and the worst, with a couple of honorable and dishonorable mentions towards the end as well. I'll also be highlighting how you can play each game on this list for yourself for you curious types. Just because a game is on my bad list doesn't automatically mean that I hate it, and at the end of the day, these are just like my opinions, man. So don't get too upset if I say something you don't like. Got it? Good. Alrighty then, let's jump right into it. Moment of transparency. I didn't always like Jet Force. Now don't get me wrong, as far as uniqueness goes, it's probably one of Rare's most unique games, a third-person shooter adventure game following the titular Jet Force Gemini crew, and their 3-man crusade against the evil Emperor Mizar and his drone army. Over the course of the game, you'll be blasting your way through a handful of worlds as Juno, Vela, and Best Boy Lupus, collecting new guns, rescuing the tribals, maybe killing some too, and blowing up more bugs than you can shake a pistol at. The environments are cool too. It's got that classic Rareware charm, and the game just had a sense of scope to it, you know? It really feels like you're on a space odyssey throughout your journey, helped by the handful of cutscenes the game has too. So why is it so low? 2 main reasons. 1, the controls. It's a shooter on the N64. We might have had to put up with it back in the day, but to say any shooters on the console age gracefully with this controller? Sorry, but the nostalgia can only buffer so much. Hell, even speedrunners of this game said it doesn't control the best. And 2, this game demands a lot out of you. Beating Jet Force is no small task, and honestly, I feel like without a guide of some sort, it's one most people wouldn't complete. Jet Force Gemini also sadly suffers from the Rayman effect, in which if you want to beat the game for real, you have to rescue every tribal from every planet, among other tasks anyway. But for all its rough spots, and some repeat playthroughs, I've warmed up to Jet Force over the years, and I still think it's worth checking out. You can play it on Rare Replay, of course, but it's also available on the Switch service if you're into that too. This one's probably gonna bug some people, but this is a hill I'm dying on. DK64 is not a good game. I'm sorry, it just isn't. I went on a whole rant about why that is in my last video, highly recommend watching by the way, but to make a long story short, this game is too big for its britches. It is the literal extreme that any collectathon game could reach and simultaneously avoid. The game is more of a test of your patience than a test of your skills, and that ultimately results in being kind of a drag. It still has the world record for most stuff to collect in a collectathon all these years later. I respect the ambition, truly I do, but ambition still has to equate to fun, and DK64 misses that mark. The reason that it's at the bottom of my bottom list is that some would say there are other ways to play this game. Some would say better ways. Sorry, must have had something in my throat there. Anyway, yeah, DK64 isn't too great. The truth hurts, but it needs to be said. So we all know GoldenEye, right? We all know how big a splash it made, basically being the de facto console shooter for the time. Well, another shooter eventually came along and outclassed it. And no, I'm not talking about Halo. I'm talking about the sci-fi FPS follow-up to GoldenEye, Perfect Dark. Perfect Dark is literally just better GoldenEye. That does kind of do it some disservice, but that's the simplest way I can put it. It just does everything better. The shooting is slicker, the aesthetic is cleaner, the sci-fi setting is a lot cooler than GoldenEye in my opinion, and what can I say? I love me a lady in latex. This game took so much power that it needed the expansion pack to contain it all, one of the few games on the console that truly needs it. The only thing holding this game back, sadly, is the controls. Almost like this godforsaken controller wasn't suited for shooting games or something. However, classic problems can be solved with modern solutions. There are ways to play this game with actually well-designed controllers. Some would even say you could play this game with a mouse and keyboard through more under-the-table means. Man, I must need a lozenge or something. But throat issues aside, Perfect Dark manages to stand the test of time, and I'm looking forward to the new entry in this series. I'm sure it'll be decent, at the very least. So if you've never heard of Grabbed by the Ghoulies before, honestly, I don't blame you. This is definitely one of Rare's stranger titles, I'd say, and the first title on our list that's not on a Nintendo console. This little relic was on the original Xbox, you know, after the Cataclysm happened. And you probably wouldn't guess it at first glance, but this game is actually a beat-em-up. I think. In this game, you take control of the somewhat cowardly Cooper in his quest to rescue his girlfriend who got grabbed by some ghoulies. To save the day and the girl, you'll have to bash whatever nasties get in your way, all the while completing whatever challenge each room of the hellish manor demands of you. It's a neat idea, I'll admit. It's just a shame that it didn't really stick the landing. GBTG starts out innocently enough, but the gameplay loop gets kinda stale kinda fast. The enemies start getting stronger, more numerous, and the challenges start getting a lot more obtuse. Some of them are even designed so that you have to fail them, which causes this Grim Reaper to spawn. And although you can bend the Reaper's touch of death to serve your own needs, I still don't think that's good design. And unfortunately, unlike our last couple of entries, there's no alternate play method for this one. But I can't fault a studio for wanting to try something new, and I will admit it does have this sort of arcadey charm to it. I don't hate Grabbed by the Ghoulies, but this game is the very definition of a one-and-done kind of experience. Silver lining, the next bottom games only get worse from here. In an age where Mario Kart is basically the only quality kart racer on the market, it's nice to go back to an older time where the plumber had some actual competition on the racing circuit. And while I don't think Diddy Kong Racing is the cream of the crop when it comes to the genre, it definitely deserves its place on top of the podium. Rare really has a talent for taking an idea and not only putting their own spin on it, but improving it as well. And in the plumber's case, they did it twice. The big thing that sets Diddy Kong apart from its contemporaries is actual single-player content. Yeah, an actual story mode in a kart racer of all things, something that other games like it would take note of for themselves. Not only that, but you can also actually race in other vehicles besides a kart. Take the skies in a plane and give the hovercraft a passing glance until you absolutely need to use it. And I mean, as a kart racer, it does everything that a good kart racer should. Colorful cast of characters? Check. Tight controls on the track? Check. A soundtrack without a single miss? Check. Diddy Kong Racing also gets bonus points for being the debut title for two other Rareware mascots. Yep, both Conker and Banjo made their first appearances in this game before they even got their own, and it's pretty clear to tell given the lack of a bird or some booze. All in all, Diddy really made his own mark on the racing circuit, and this game definitely was worth booting up. I also want to be clear I am strictly talking about the original. We don't talk about the DS remake. The only thing I have left to say on this subject is, when the hell is this coming to NSO? This one confuses me more than anything. When I think of this game, the only question that comes to mind is, how? How do we go from this to this? But then one of you out there is probably thinking, Mickey, that's Disney though. And you would be right, but please direct your gaze to the bottom left of the box. It has the golden seal, so it's fair game for me to tear apart. So as I was saying before, how? How do you make a kart racer that's better than Mario Kart and then turn around a couple years later and make one that's worse? I mean, you could just take the easy route and blame it on Disney meddling, and trust me, part of me does, but I still don't know how it ends up this bad. All the charm and cool ideas Diddy Kong had, nowhere to be found here. The soundtrack, dull as a worn out knife. The actual tracks, lame as heck. It's literally just a worse Mario Kart in every aspect. And the cherry on top of the crap cake, your races are already decided from the character select screen. Now, character differences in kart races is nothing new, but the differences between the Disney drivers would make some fighting game tier gaps look like tiny cracks. Like say for instance, you just wanted to play as Goofy, cause Goofy is your dog. Well, you ain't gonna win any races with him cause Goofy is god-awful. Even the goddamn game fact tells you you're screwed if you pick him. Like, imagine playing Mario Kart 8 and you lose the race just because you picked Bowser, or you played CTR and you lost because you picked I don't know, frickin' Dingo Dial or something. It'd be infuriating. The same way it's infuriating how this game got so botched up. Rare's better than this. They've done better than this. And that only makes this sting all the more. Well dang, back to Diddy already. Gotta hand it to the chimp, he really knows how to pick his roles. Taking silver on our list of greats, we have what is arguably the peak of the DKC series and the strongest game on the original trilogy, Donkey Kong Country 2. Despite the Big Ape starting things strong, it was ultimately with his kidnapping that he managed to peak. No disrespect to the rest of the games. In Diddy Kong's quest, you take up the role as Diddy, alongside his girlfriend Dixie, to rescue the Prime Primate from those crooked crocs. But we're on their turf this time, and the game is definitely going to make sure you know it. Everything that made the first DKC game great is here in the sequel. Tight platforming action with an amazing soundtrack and cutting-edge graphics. What sets the sequel apart, however, is the size of it all. There's just more to DKC 2. More levels, more obstacles, more secrets, more challenge, everything. And all that moreness just serves to make it an overall better experience. Really, I find it hard-pressed to say stuff about this game that hasn't been said already. It's easily among the greats as far as 2D platformers go, and deserves a top spot not just on my list, but anyone's really. There's only one game Rare has made in my eyes that surpasses it, though. So in my ongoing quest to experience all that Rare has made to offer, of course that journey would lead me towards the Battletoads, and to my surprise, there's a lot more Battletoads games than one would ever care to guess. Most of the games are okay, nothing groundbreaking, but there's some merit in all the ones I've played thus far. All of them except one. It's the damn crossover game that grinds my gears. I don't know what it is about Battletoads and Double Dragon, but geez, this game sucks. And how can we count the ways? First off, the difficulty. Classic Battletoads fashion dictates that these games kick you in the balls, but this game just takes it to a whole nother level. It's brutal, but even the original game felt like light work compared to this. I played the SNES version of the game, and I don't know if that was the wrong choice or if I should have gone with the bros instead of the toads, but this game just, well, I'd go as far as to call it unfair. Secondly, the controls. They're awful. Despite being on a stronger piece of hardware, this game somehow feels worse than that on the NES, and the NES had less buttons to boot. Not to mention the soundtrack is nowhere near as memorable either. And even when it's all said and done and this game is done essentially torturing you, it's just over. No sense of pride or accomplishment, just a relief that the pain is finally over with. If anything, the biggest accomplishment is how both parties' careers weren't killed on the spot from this. The 90s were a strange time indeed. Okay, so before we get to our big winner and big loser, some mentions, both honorable and dishonorable. These games for one reason or another just didn't make the cut, but I had some things to say about them anyway. Honorable mentions go to Viva Pinata and Sea of Thieves. I don't typically enjoy farm sim style games, but I actually got a kick out of Viva Pinata, which is a feat in and of itself. And Sea of Thieves might have been on this list if I played it more. I'm hoping I can, but you know, friends and all that. The dishonorable mentions go to Star Fox Adventures and Nuts and Bolts. I don't hate either of these games, but in Star Fox's case, it's just a Zelda game with a furry skin makeover, and playing it just makes me want to play an actual Zelda game. And although I don't hate Nuts and Bolts anymore, I still see it as a betrayal of the franchise to a degree. It's an alright game, just not a good banjo game. With that out of the way, let's get to my top Rareware title. What? Banjo-Kazooie is his favorite Rare game? No way! In all seriousness though, if you know me, this should come as no surprise to you. And even if you don't know me, I feel like the sign should have been a little obvious still. But to make it absolutely clear, yes, Banjo-Kazooie is not only what I consider to be Rare's best game, but it's also my all-time favorite game. Period. It is the gold standard to which I hold all of the games of its ilk, and a game that is near and dear to my heart. I could really make a whole video praising this game, and maybe I will sometime down the line, but in the interest of time, let's keep it relatively brief. Mario 64 basically became the blueprint for 3D platformers when it released, but a blueprint can be revised, improved, made into something new, something better. That's basically how I view the original Banjo game. Everything the plumber did, the Baron Bird improved on, and it is all the better for it. A game so fun to play, a game that oozes charm out of every pore, and a game that has stood the test of time, despite the franchise's overall stagnation. I've played through this game more times than years I've been alive, and every time I do, I always 100% it. And even if a true third game may never come, the memories, the experience, and the pure joy that the original provided to me will always be timeless. So considering that Banjo is my top Rare game and Nuts and Bolts isn't my bottom one, you're probably asking what Rare game do I consider the worst? Well, let me answer your question with one of my own. How do you ruin something that's perfect? Perfect Dark Zero is my #1 worst Rare game, and really I think it deserves the spot. Nuts and Bolts may be a portrayal of what Kazooie established, but that game still does have its own merits. Perfect Dark Zero, however, spits in the face of everything that made the original great, and has zero redeeming qualities of its own. So let's go down that list of those lack of qualities, shall we? First, this design. This right here is supposed to be Joanna Dark. You know, the secret agent. This does not look like a secret agent. This looks like a backup dancer for a frickin' boy band. And yes, I'm aware this game is a prequel, and no, the suit does not make it any better, but that's just the tip of this sundae. The original Perfect Dark basically improved on the original GoldenEye as discussed before. It's the best you could possibly hope for as far as an FPS game on the Nintendo 64. Perfect Dark Zero seemed to think so too, because it basically controls like an N64 game on the fricking Xbox 360. And I mean that in the worst of ways. In fact, I'd go as far to say the gunplay is better on the Nintendo 64 compared to this. The AI actually puts up a fight, the music and vibe are much better and more fitting, and the campaign is nowhere near as obnoxious. Dare I say it's actually fun. With the prequel, the AI makes Lemmings seem intelligent by comparison. The overall vibe is all over the place, from the scenery to the art direction and even to the soundtrack, and as far as the campaign, honestly, even I couldn't bring myself to beat it. Hell, I still can't bring myself to beat it. I got to a freaking escort mission and threw my hands in the air. And even the process up to that mission was a pain, because despite being a secret agent, stealth is not really possible because every freaking minion will notice you even if you shoot from a freaking silenced pistol from 50 yards away. Okay. Well, getting back on track, apparently there's also more than one escort mission, but I'm in no rush to find out if that's true or not. But this game is just as is. There's no patch to improve on the game, no ROM hack that fixes any flaws, hell, not even any cheats to help you get through to the credits. And even though this was a launch title for the 360, I still don't think it deserves any slack because of it. I've heard whispers that the multiplayer was good, but really, who's buying this game for the multiplayer? Perfect Dark Zero is more like a perfect 0 out of 10. The only thing I can say about it is that it makes me optimistic for the franchise's reboot, because even if the new devs tried on purpose to make the game bad, they'd still be hard-pressed to knock this game off of its smelly, rusty throne. And there we have it, my top 5 best and top 5 worst Rare games. Honestly, I ended up having a lot more to say about this than I initially thought. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed it. Like, comment, sub, all that YouTube jargon. Tell me how I'm wrong in the comments, and more to come as always, and I'll see you then.